Thank you, Rashid. I'll take one of the submitted questions first. This is a question that came from Roger Austin from the Bromley Green Party. Is Roger here? Roger's question is, and we'll start with you, Jionathan, and then we will work on Roger's question is, how will you make the Green Party more visible and appealing to the electorate to help increase our voter share in forthcoming elections?
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways that we need to do this. I think we have to focus on put all our resources into specific areas. So that means doing Target to Win better. And as a councillor in the West Midlands, I've seen the impact that has when we really focus on one area. I think we have to talk in ways that people understand on the doorstep and in the media. And I think when you just pause for a moment to look at the success of the Sheffield Tree campaign and think, well, why has that worked as a campaign for the Green Party? And the answer is it because it takes our big green principles of that ecological wisdom and grassroots democracy and non-violence and literally brings them onto people's doorsteps. Because every time they walk out their house and they see one of those trees, they're getting a reminder of that Green Party campaign in terms of local people having a say, in terms of us putting our bodies on the line and resisting, but doing it in a non-violent way. In terms of, actually, we want to protect trees that have been there for generations, not just for short-term profit. And so we've got to take that and think, well, how can we make those big green principles, repeat that around the country, find those things on people's doorsteps that make a difference and talk in ways that people understand and not kind of massive abstract concepts that don't mean things to people every day.
I'd agree with that. I guess how do we get more visible? Well, it actually being northern helps you be more visible. And I will explain what I mean by that. If you live in Huddersfield, as I do, it's about half an hour train journey to Media City in Manchester. A BBC breakfast is made in Media City in Manchester, and they ring me up every now and again and say, there's something like, Councillor Cooper, do you know about dog control orders? And I go, yes, I'm an expert on dog control orders. And I will spend about half an hour on the internet, on the train, on the way down there, and I managed to pass off as a dog control orders expert. And so we actually improve our reach by having somebody who's that close to Media City who's able to go on that programme. In fact, before the 2015 manifesto launch, I was doing the manifesto launch on the sofa of BBC Breakfast, and you can see it on YouTube. So I'm familiar with media and dealing with it. Making it more appealing, I think making our politics relevant to people's everyday lives. What Jionathan said is quite correct. I mean, if we get somebody elected to a council in a ward, it's actually that they will be the Green for that whole council. It's about the 7th largest local authority I represent in the whole country. And when I speak for the Green Party, for that whole council. And so if we get a Green on every council in the country, just one on every council in the country, we will have a spokesperson for that whole area. And so the Target to Win strategy is a national strategy. It's not simply looking at a small area. And so that's the way we'll get a much greater reach.
I just want to be straight with you that we are coming into some of the most challenging council elections that we will see in our history. The 4-year cycle means that this next round of council elections would have been the Green surge year, and we're going to have to work to battle to retain and grow our councils. It's not the first, there's also the possibility there might be a snap general election around the same time. Something that we've already done, something we've already delivered an increased number of councillors during, and something that if we embed policy that creates the structures that get more Greens elected, that we can achieve again. I've worked on the executive for 4 years, and one of the key successes I think that I championed was getting field officers in place across the country. because you as volunteers aren't able to deliver all of the work in the same way that a paid post can do. I think ring-fencing that money was vitally important. But I also think that we need a next, having also been there when we've worked to set up campaign school, I think there's a next step, and that's a campaign school on issues. I know that we can win elections if we're working on things like the M4 Relief Road, the trees in Sheffield, the Heathrow expansion, by taking these issues and bringing them to people. But we need the skills in our party to deliver that at a local level and to teach people how we hang our local council issues on that point. With the M4 Relief Road, for example, that's about investing in trains, not in roads, about the environment, about social justice, and we can use that one issue to amplify our message on many other policies. On top of that, the way that we get people elected is by being on doorsteps. And I've worked to inspire people to come out canvassing, to get canvassing campaigns up in operation, because that is the only way that we're going to get the information we need, the interactions we need, that will deliver green councillors. So by working with you on the doorsteps across the country, I'll continue to do that work to make sure that we're out there and bringing our message to people. One of the other points that I've built up in the last few years is trying how we bring local issues and connect them to the wider points. So for me, that was the flooding campaign that I've been working on. I actually had a big banner made for the next flood that says, "This is climate change." First winter in such a long time that there's not been a flood. So if you re-elect me, it'll give me a chance to go out and use my banner that I've been desperate to make those connections from a local flooding issue to a wider global climate change issue. Thank you.
I'm going to stand up just to show you something about appealing visibility. I'm going to restrict the format on this. Sorry, I know. But what it is, in terms of visibility, this was something that some of my guys down in South London put together for the elections. Yeah. And so we had these shirts done. So they took the green ideas, but we just did some new branding, new designing, which guys that were 14, 15 years old who weren't going to vote for anyone said, "You know what, I like them shirts, I'll wear that shirt." And they're walking around in the community, in the housing estates, wearing these shirts because it's allowing bricks and vote green. And we're like, it's so obvious that we miss some of the really basic stuff. You know, sometimes we kind of get a bit too above ourselves with our ideas and we think, well, we're a small party with limited resources. So what we should be doing is having some really good ideas and being really imaginative about stuff. In terms of visibility, down in Lambeth, where we are now the opposition to Labour, where we have 5 very, very, very good councillors, we should have had more. We got involved in local campaigns that really meant a lot to people, not what you call traditional green campaigns. We weren't out saving trees, although that's part of what we do. We were out trying to save the independent business sector in the business arches down in Brixton. We were out in the housing estates, we were out in the library campaigns. This is stuff that people could really connect with. When they saw us as Greens out there on the front line with them, it was like, hold on a sec, I thought you guys into having trees. So we changed perceptions. We did a lot of work with young people. I do a lot of talks around high schools and colleges about what the Greens really represent. It's just changing people's perceptions. You know, they got a reparations march for slavery next week. We'll have Greens down there. The Green Mayor from Bristol will be speaking at the march. Maybe Jionathan will be speaking there. So this is completely changing the perceptions amongst people who don't really understand it. So what I would say is, in terms of making ourselves appealing, it's just the language. Our language is a kind of exclusive language and it should be an inclusive language. And that's really what we're about. And it doesn't take money, it just takes an imagination and some political will. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. Do we have any questions from the floor? Anna.
Yes, I'm Anna from Islington. Hello, I'm Anna from Islington Green Party. I'm a primary school teacher who got made redundant directly as a result of austerity cuts, but also, in my opinion, very bad management from the local authority. Can I ask this councillor, this group of people, very specifically, the average teacher, over half the teachers in this country now are under 35. Bearing in mind working age goes from 21 to 68, unless you're very lucky and been teaching for more than 30 years. that is less than a third of the age span, and that has serious implications to the models that children see in school. It exacerbates the problems that have been politically imposed by the accountability regime, etc., etc. Can I ask you how you're going to speak about education, in which you confront this complete lack of diversity in the primary sector, and the ageism and the intergenerational problems that go with it? And in the case of employment, it is in the public sector. With teaching, it is definitely affecting the older generation, not the younger generation. I'm not saying that housing goes differently, but can you pick up some of those issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay, a very real problem. I'm aware of a number of teachers who at times dropped out of the profession and find teaching just far too stressful an environment to work in. So some very practical things to talk about. The Ofsted regime is, if you want to send a school into a panic, you say the word Ofsted and you're coming in a couple of days, and that is a huge, the whole Ofsted process is a hugely stressful. I think that it ought to be scrapped straightforwardly. The Ofsted process has got to go. Similarly, the SATS regime. The SATS regime and how that operates within schools, that testing of children, which is less and less about education and more about getting some sort of league table down. And I don't think we ought to have league tables for schools. I think we ought to be just trying to get every school to operate to the best of its level. So in terms of answering the question, which was very much about diversity and ageism, I think taking that stress out of the process will make more people want to stay in education and not get burnt out. And that will mean a greater length of service for the people who are there. I also think we've got to get rid of this ability for parents to run between different schools like it's some sort of anarchy. I think we ought to make sure that every local school is a good school and not have some sort of market system where people can go around and try and send those people who've got the money are able to send their kids 10 miles away. We need to make sure that we have a good education system for everyone. And the way that education is mucked around with at the moment, with academies, all that approach, that's got to stop. We've just got to make sure we have a single education system that works and is good.
Thank you.
I just want to say sorry that that's your experience, because when I see teachers and I see so many passionate people who care about children and the job that they're doing, and to be treated in that way is just outrageous by a local authority or by a government. And I think that we need to be clear on the fact that this government has been undermining teachers, but also just undermining people who work in the public sector. The public sector fundamentally deserves a pay rise. But it's not just the same story that you've told I've heard within the nursing profession and with other professions, And we need to address this, not just by having a token pay rise that the Tories have come out with, which to me is possibly a sign that they'll be triggering a general election in some, by trying to highlight the fact that they've listened to people without actually delivering a proper pay rise. And we talk about, I agree with Andrew's points on our policies on Ofsted, SATs and league tables. And beyond that, tackling academies as well, which again is a local issue that I think that we have a strong campaign school working on this. It's something that we can win elections on. We also need to be making sure we talk quite often in our policies on a child focus and an education focus. And then I think there is a need to be talking about the role that this has on teachers as well. To be making sure that that is embedded in what we're talking about, as well as ensuring that those people who are delivering education, as well as experiencing it, are at the very heart of all of those policies. But I also think that we need to be tackling ageism across the country as well. And we've seen huge impacts on older generations, but very specifically older women across the country, whether that's looking at what happened to the WASPy women and their pensions, or whether that's looking at this increase of support of younger people into roles which are on lower salaries, and then getting rid of experienced, highly paid people who are able to deliver genuine results. And I think that ageism is something we also need to be highlighting and tackling across society as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. What I would say first up, I don't want on foolhardy, but come the new academic year, I go to a post-grad in teacher training, so I'm going back in, and I'm only 35 years old, because I spent 19 years working in education, especially with children, designing mentoring programs, working with what they call the hard to reach, the hard to teach, but I never qualified as a teacher. And so I realised, okay, let me bite the bullet, rather than criticising from the outside, let me dive in. Like I said, if you do the same thing, continue to expect a different result, it's called insanity. So we have to dive in and we've got to make the change. So I take what you're saying about neoliberalism, because it's very, very true. I come across a lot of children in schools and their teachers can be like 26 years old. And I'm thinking, I've got children that are in their 20s. But then the funny thing is that I was in the school last week over in Wilson, and I did a series of workshops on gang and knife crime and youth culture. And I said to the students, it was like year 8s, year 9s, so they were like 13 or 14 years old. I said, yo guys, I'm an old man. I said, sir, you're not an old man. I said, trust me, I'm older than your teacher and your parents. I'm an old man. I said, no sir, you're not an old man, because your mind and your ideas are young. And so I realised it's about the mentality that we bring with us into the space. And so what I would say is that if we are critical of what's happening with education, we've got to be very realistic as to what we as Greens can achieve. Okay? In terms of giving parents a true alternative, we should be maybe helping parents on the list of options which they currently have in terms of setting up schools themselves with the parents leading the agenda. Because as it is, with education what it is, it's like an industry. And unfortunately our children are being taught in these subjects which don't prepare them to actually go out and deal with life as it is. So we get a lot of children being excluded from school, not because they're bad, but because the education doesn't work for them. And the link between knife crime and school exclusions is now coming out. So I would say empower the parents to set up alternative education provisions. As he goes back into education sector, I must be a sucker. I would agree with it.
I'll possibly comment. Thank you, Jionathan.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think you've put your finger on something that's really important. I have two daughters, both of whom are in a primary school which is excellent. It's in a really multicultural area. It's a fantastic school. They do a fantastic job. But I see that I think that most of the teachers are under 35, and that concerns me, both because what you touched on, the lack of intergenerational experience that children are having, but also that loss of experience and wisdom that those schools are losing for the long term. And this is a problem within the wider public sector, within the county council, I've been pushing quite hard to talk when the county talks about social services recruitment. I'm saying, but what about retention? How are you going to keep people who are committed professionals and yet they're leaving after a year and 2 years because of the stress? You won't need to recruit if you can retain your staff, and that is not all about money. That is about job fulfillment. It's about trusting people to get on and do their jobs. And I think the same applies within the school sector. We do need this balance between accountability and trust, but that balance is wrong at the moment. And I'd like to see much more emphasis placed on clusters of schools, groups of schools moderating each other, and more emphasis being put on that. And there are now some very early signs of some aims to how can we reduce teacher workload, but we've got to go a lot further on that.
Okay. The other thing which needs mentioning, of course, is the pupil premium issue, which is going to mean that there are going to be big cuts coming down the line to a lot of schools. The school where I'm the governor is going to lose £100,000 out of its budget. Now that's teachers. And that's going to put more pressure on. So we've got to make sure that we're ahead of the game and knowing about those sort of issues and making sure that we're getting that in front of people.
Thank you. The next question is from me, which I submitted very late. It became very clear last night that the US Secretary of State is in Australia and that Australian officials have been left with the distinct impression that the bombing of Iran will begin next month. So my question is, We live in hyper-militarised times, where military solutions are the first thing that governments reach for, and how do we change that occasion? Amelia.
Such an important question, and I think that for me, the Stop the War movement was the point that engaged me in politics, and was a movement, I think, for many people of my generation, that made people realise that it's political decisions that oppress people. And by building that movement, I think it's vitally important that we continue this grassroots campaign of 1 million people on the streets, of getting people out and publicising the atrocities that our government continually creates on the international scene. Because it simply isn't good enough to be going in with your weapons, to be going in, to be talking about nuclear weapons, and to be continuing to invest in an international arms trade that fundamentally means that Britain is killing innocent people, not just when they take military into different countries, but as a result of other countries doing the same. We need to continue to campaign to stop the production of weapons, to stop the selling of weapons from the UK. We must build movements to ensure that our elected representatives don't vote for bombings or for invasion in anywhere in the world. And we must ensure that we are building our party around our anti-war message that has consistently been clear, whether that was from Iraq or Iran on a previous occasion, whether that's Afghanistan, whether that's Syria. We must continue to promote that stance while the Labour Party are arguing about what they're going to do, and if Jeremy Corbyn's going to press the nuclear button. We can stand there proud and say that we do not believe in any militarisation, and proudly say that we do not believe in any nuclear weapons.
Okay, your question was, in these hyper-militarised times, how do we change the equation? It's a very good question. I think the link between what we know as the military-industrial complex and mass media, and how the information and the narrative is structured in such a way, I think we've got to work out. I mean, you're obviously a man of great vision. I respect the questions there. But like I said, to know that the link between the military and the media is so strong, to get out a counter-narrative that's truly effective, is hard work. I was one of those people that demonstrated in 2008 in Iraq. There was 2 million people on the streets, right across the board. If there was one moment when you think change was going to happen, that was the moment. And what happened? A couple of weeks later, boom, they go into Iraq. And 15 years later, we're still carrying on the mess. And you think, wow, okay, well, whatever tactics we're doing, we need to have a complete rethink because it's not working. Demonstrations with placards doesn't work. There's got to be something else. And maybe we've got to start going on an information blitz to expose some of these politicians and their links to the military-industrial complex and how they're being bought and paid for by arms manufacturers. And those MPs who voted, when Jeremy Corbyn tried to put the motion through Parliament to stop the arms sales in regards to Yemen, and his own Labour MPs voted against it. We're like, all those guys should be exposed. We should be making political capital out of the fact that we have very, very duplicitous people in office who get it on our backs, then create havoc, and we're left to clean up the mess that they create. We should be very, very merciless and very, very plain and very, very simple in how we expose people and their links to this very, very, very dangerous game that we play here. I mean, I don't know what we can do apart from that, because like I said, I don't think, I'm tired of demonstrations. Martin Luther King said in 1966, I'm tired of marching. That was 52 years ago. We need to change our tactics. We need to expose the links and who these people are and embarrass them into doing something different.
Thank you.
Yeah, hyper-military time. I think we're coming out of one of the, statistically speaking, violent conflict has declined significantly over the last 60 or 70 years. And I think it's a massive shock for certainly my generation that we seem to be coming out of that, because everything we've taken for granted over the last 60 years in that way suddenly seems to be falling apart. And I think that's a massive shock for people. I think so many people think that doing something equals, oh, we've got to take military action because that seems to be the only thing we can do. I heard that argument a lot with the Syrian conflict. But what I think the Green Party is so good at, and again it comes down to one of our core principles of non-violent direct action, is that we know that there are alternatives, that doing something does not mean bombing people, that we can resist peacefully but very robustly and firmly. And so I think we can demonstrate that we will pursue peace with the same rigour that others pursue war. And I can think of some of the peacemaker teams that have been going into Iraq over the years. I think of actually the Iran nuclear deal that Obama got, which took years and years. He was pursuing peace with a rigour that others pursue war. And so we've got to present that alternative that we're not saying do nothing. And actually, pursuing peace is hard. It takes courage. It means putting our bodies on the line. It is not the meek and easy option. And that is the message we need to get out.
Thank you.
The question was, how are we going to get across, get people away from military solutions? Straightforwardly, by showing that they don't work. And every time we look back at Iraq, when we look back at Syria, and even Libya, which it's a huge success. We've got rid of Colonel Gaddafi. It's now a huge problem there. There are enormous factions right the way across Libya. And the results of these conflicts is often people become asylum seekers, they become refugees, and they come to us. Rightfully, you can completely understand why people try and avoid conflict. And so it's not something that just happens a long way away and doesn't have an impact. We've got to show that it does have an impact here, and that actually pursuing peace and is actually the best way of going about it. So how do we actually get away from military solution? I think it's by getting closer friendships between countries. And let's have a think about how you might do that. You might have an organisation with strong political links, maybe a parliament, perhaps, where they make decisions on social policy, on trade, and things like that, and where there's these really strong political organisations where people don't go to war anymore, like the European Union. And it's crazy that we're not recognising that the European Union is one of the most successful peace projects that we've been involved in. What do we need more of this sort of thing? That's where the real success will come from. And Trident, £100 billion spent on Trident, £3 billion a year. What could we do with £3 billion a year? An enormous amount of really positive work that could go back into our local councils, building more sustainable communities. We can save billions of wasted money on military spending and spending on our communities, making a better world and a better society.
Can I take another question from the floor?
Come forward. Like that.
I'm Phil Fletcher of St Albans Green Party. I'd like to hear what the contestants, ideas contestants have about tax policy.
Thank you.
Tax policy. Okay, we've got policies on. We've got a lot of policies on tax, land value taxation. We certainly want to tax the rich more and make sure that the tax is progressive and actually helps fund social services, so the rich pay more than the poor. So those are important things. We want to make sure that we actually tax bad things such as pollution and such like to a greater extent to actually make them unaffordable. We want to use tax as an instrument to make a better world. And I think we've got to start from the principle which we often, is often understood, particularly by Conservatives, that we all benefit from a more equal society, and taxation is the way that we actually do that. And so taxation is a good, it's a positive thing. And so when you look at the more equal societies, you look at the societies which are more content, they're often the countries where there is a more progressive taxation system, such as the Scandinavian countries. And so we've got to look at those, I think, and look at the success that they've had, and the better and local environments that they have as a result of that.
Thank you.
I always think it's interesting that tax is used as if it's a bad word. You know, that money that we pay in to deliver all parts of society, whether that's our hospitals, our schools, the very pavements that we walk on. And I think for far too long has that been the case, but on top of that, for far too long, have big businesses been freeloading off our taxpayers' money by taking advantage of tax loopholes that means that they don't pay their fair share of tax here in the UK. It's frustrating to look at us plunge out of the EU, which was the greatest force for tackling these loopholes. And I think that we need to be challenging that. I was very proud of Molly Scott Cato's work on the bad boys of Brexit, which highlighted those people that were going to take economic advantage of the fact that we'd leave the EU as a result of their growing and stronger policies on tax havens. Because this is a question about the kind of world that we want to deliver. It's about a fair world. It's about a world where if someone's sick, that they get given the same healthcare, regardless of who they are or where they've come from. And I think that we need to be tackling that question around tax from the perspective of that vision of the kind of world we want to build. Because I think that fairer world is just around the corner. We're winning those arguments on austerity. We've been winning those arguments on issues like the NHS. And we need to be continuing to do that, not just on tax, but also on how we use that tax to subsidise to build that world. Whether that's looking at subsidies to support clean energy or subsidies that support local communities. There are so many interlinking issues that we need to be addressing by creating that bold vision and seeing where we can put our money, as well as challenging and tackling those people who are free riding of every single one of us.
Thank you.
As a man who's currently being pursued by HMRC, this is very dear to me. I wrote them a letter and I said, how the hell can you have a system where the Duke of Westminster avoids 3.5 billion inheritance tax and you're chasing me for late filing? I'm like, are you guys crazy? I'm not paying a penny. That's what I told him straight. I said, I'll get a person called capital out, so you are my guinea pigs for my course here. To know that the Hong Kong tax code is about 300 pages. So everything that they need to say about taxes, they say in 300 pages. The UK tax code, the last time I checked, as a hobby, but the last time I checked, it was over 18,000 pages. The revolving door between private accountancy firms and HMRC, people should go to jail for that stuff. Like, people really should be locked up. Because the result is this country loses over £120 billion a year in taxes which could be collected because these loopholes are exploited by the same people who wrote the loophole in the first place. I think my Nigerian friends are called a 419. It's called a scam. and we have to be very clear and use a language which people actually understand. When we get into this technological tool, we blind people. The reality is it's a scam, it's a hustle. And like I said, my Nigerian friends say, oh, it's 419, it's all about this stuff. So I think that in terms of the taxation, we need to highlight the fact that the system is so completely and utterly corrupt that it's not going to work. And that 120 billion that we lose every single year, that's your schools, that's your education, that's your NHS, that's where the money's gone. And unless we start holding people to account, and that's where we should be looking at, then we won't get a result, because the same people who avoided paying the tax are the same people who are putting millions of pounds into the mass media. So we're watching programs about the lifestyle of the rich and the famous. We should be watching programs about the lifestyles of those who go to jail for avoiding paying their taxes. Do you see what I'm saying? It's real simple stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, we can use tax to help restructure our economy so that it is a more green economy. And so that does mean taxing pollution, so it reflects the true ongoing cost across generations. And it means taxing materials and things like plastics. But it also, I think, means, this is something I don't think we talk often enough about in the Green Party, it means taxing some things less. So it means taxing employment and good work, it means taxing that less. And so when you think of a practical example about repair cafes, We want there to be new businesses repairing and mending things again, because we put tax up on materials, we put tax down on employment. And I think we can get much better a party about talking about both putting taxes up and putting taxes down. And so the second thing I want to say is that as a party, we do not have a good reputation for getting our numbers right when it comes to tax policies. We are in the last election, we claimed that, I can't remember the figures, that the sugar tax was going to bring billions into the public coffers to pay for the public services we all hold so dear, but yet we didn't take into account the fact that we would expect people to use less sugar and therefore we would get less tax back on that. And so, to be honest, I met quite a few people in the last couple of elections who said, you know what, I'm trying to decide between voting green or Conservatives, but to be honest, I think your tax and economics are loopy. And we've got to do something about that and get that right.
Thank you.
Well, I've had a go.
You've had a go.
Yes. But just to agree with Jonathan, financial transaction tax, we overplayed the amount of money that we could have got out of the financial transaction tax, and that affects our credibility.
Structure, yes.
Thank you. Elizabeth, Hackney Green Party. So my question is, what do the candidates actually think the role of deputy leader is? What do you think you'll see yourself doing on a day-to-day basis? And how would you differentiate that from the role of co-leader, or just another role within the leadership team?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Amelia.
It's been interesting doing this job for 4 years, because in many ways I feel like I have built the job around myself and the expectations of what you had of what the deputy leader was. Because when I was first elected in 2014, the role was unpaid. However, with the green surge in the 2015 general elections, your expectation was that you would have leadership in your communities, doing local press work and being on doorsteps. I listened to that and reacted to that to make sure that you had the leadership support that you were so vitally thirsty for. This isn't enough to just have one person doing it. We need to have a strong team to make sure that we're supported. On top of that, I've listened to the kind of campaigns that you want to be amplified in media as well as your communities. This campaigning work is, again, how you take on your own campaigns and promote issues that are typically green issues, but simply by focusing on them and delivering on them, we can get that unique green message across. It's something that I can do as an individual, as well as representing the party on those platforms. Also you've got the whole point of if someone's ill and you end up having to stand in for them, which again, we do work as a whole. At the moment, we do work as a whole team, trying to support each other, trying to represent it, trying to build the party, and stepping in when it's so vitally important that we step in. One of the things that people don't always see is the administrative work that goes behind all of this. And by supporting the party in a number of different ways, whether that's setting up structures or delivering on different campaigns, then there's a whole kind of backlog. Every single day is different. There's a whole backlog of administration that simply you don't see. But you see the outcomes of that, whether that's in the press and media, whether that's in your local communities, or whether that's as a result of increased election results and more councillors.
Thank you.
Good question, Elizabeth. Very good question. Role of deputy leader. Was it involved? Well, I think Amelia is probably the most qualified person to speak. What I see is that I see the role of deputy as being like a roving ambassador for the Greens. So you're that person who, if there's a vacuum that needs to be filled and the leadership is doing something else, you're that person that steps in and you provide that credible voice of what the Greens are all about. So effectively, you're like a point person, and your role is to support the leadership and also support membership. Also, I would say that as a deputy, I'll be honest, I'm a grassroots cat. That's where I came from. My politics was politics on the street. You know, I was the guy that was always on the street corner, like absolutely on the street corner in Brixton, and was holding classes with people, explaining to them in terms which they understood what the politics were of Brixton and how they were being affected. You know, by the policies that were coming out of the town hall. And I think that's important for us as leadership. The leadership is one aspect, and the deputy, I think, should be like a foil. So you had Barack Obama, and you had Biden. Biden was like Barack was like Biden, but as a team, they seem to work. I don't know about Trump and Spence. That's a bit worrying. That's a bit worrying. Because Spence looks like he comes from, what was that, Captain Scarlet? He looks like a character from Captain Scarlet. Maybe the example of Jill Steele and Barack Obama in the States, that was an interesting combination. And I think that the deputy should bring that flavour, not be exactly what the leadership is like, something slightly different. But like I said, I think for me, as a deputy who's from the grassroots, I would take that leadership down to the grassroots, like into the housing estates, into the street corners, and people be like, you're the deputy of a political party and you're here amongst the people? Oh my gosh, let me get a picture that I can tweet me. And that's how we're going to raise our profile. I think it's about being down with people. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's three things. The first is that spokesperson role, which is performed, I think, as part of a team, both the wider spokespeople team and the leadership team. And I think that media part of it is about being prepared, so that when a subject pops into the public profile, that a member of the leadership team has got the relationship with journalists, so they can drop them a quote and get in the media, and also is able to do kind of that translation of that green policy into kind of three punchy points that are relevant. But we've got to be prepared to do that. So that's the spokesperson role. The second, I think, is the visiting local parties, keeping in touch with local views, spreading the best practice, and that's why I'm saying I will be out in the first 100 days, making sure I'm visiting each of the 9 regions and knocking on priority ward doors so we get more councillors. So that kind of championing of best practice and visiting parties is the second thing. And the third thing, I think, is a role in the governance of the party. So the deputy leader has a seat on GPEX. And certainly, if I was elected, I would be championing making the organisation works in a way that is able to release you as individuals and local parties to fulfil your vision and purposes, because that's what a good organisation does. It releases individuals, it doesn't hold them back. And so that my experience in terms of managing staff and volunteers, in my working in homelessness, and as chair of trustees of a charity and on school governors, is how do we make an organisation work that releases our wonderful people? And so that's the third thing. Spokespeople, visiting parties and championing target to win and best practice, and the role in the governance of the party to release us all to fulfil our potential.
Thank you, Jionathan.
Okay, I guess Rashid mentioned Trump Spence as a sort of leader, deputy leader type role. I looked at Blair Prescott, where he had a smooth southern, smooth leader there, and then they had this gritty northern deputy, and I think there's a real benefit in having that particular role. And I can see how that might go down. So, everybody who actually gets the role of deputy leader will bring their own style to it. And I think whoever you select, they will bring their own thing. Amelia has certainly brought her style to that, and there are things that she's prioritised, and quite rightly so. There are skills that I have that I would bring to the role, and I've, as I say, been a councillor for 20 odd years. And so one of the things I do, I want to visit in the way any deputy leader would every local party that I possibly could over the 2-year period. I specifically want to see as many councillors as I could over that period, the 170 that there are. But I very much want my visits not to be simply a royal visit, going, hello, you're doing marvellously. Though that is important, encouraging people to do things. But actually bringing practical support and advice to those parties. Because after 20 odd years of actually initiating and implementing Green Party policies, I've got a few ideas, and I've learned from others as well as I've gone around. And that's actually a practical experience that is hard to get unless you're actually being in an elected position in a council where you can bring those powers and skills forward. So that's one of the things I want to do. I'd like to go with John Prescott of the Green Party. No, not really. And bring some real practical support to local parties.
Thank you. A question that was sent in by Phil Fabulous from Southwark. Is Phil reading? Shall I read it? Although not mutually exclusive, which do you see as being more important? Putting resources into increasing our national vote share or increasing our councillor numbers through more targeted work? Rashid.
I think, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, to know that we've lost a third of our membership, but at the same time we have increased some of our council seats, puts us in a very interesting position. And as a part of small resources, limited resources, we've got to think outside the box. I think our vote share is important. I think that really is going to define us, because a lot of times you go up to the doorstep and people say, well, what's the point of voting for Greens? You guys ain't going to win. You can't vote for you. It's a two-horse race. It's a two-party system. You ain't got a chance. So sometimes we have to really come with a language that demolishes that argument, and people realise that voting for Green, our vote share can increase, and people feel confident that a Green vote is not a wasted vote, because that's something that Labour always use again and again to outfoot us on the doorstep. You might be doing well in the polls, but then when it comes down to voting, people say, oh, well, I really like you guys, and my heart's with you, but I'm going to vote for Labour because we've got to stop whoever. And you're like, so people died for the right to vote so you could vote out of fear. How does that work? 100 years ago, they had the suffragette movement, and people went to jail for the right to vote, and you're voting out of fear. That's not a very empowering context. So I think what we come with is that we have to let people know that a vote for the Greens is not a wasted vote. You're actually laying down a marker. So I would put the resources into raising awareness and getting people out. That's personally where I would come from. Because down in Brixton, people would vote for a dead fox if it was a Labour fox. And it's heartbreaking, because we're out there doing the work and they oh no, we're voting Labour. Is that cool?
That's cool. Thank you, Rashid. Jonathan.
Yeah, I would definitely be putting our resources into winning more councillor seats, so that in those areas we can say, look, the evidence is we can win here, and therefore, you can back us without fearing that it's a wasted vote. So yeah, I don't think it would go, if we went from 3 to 10%, as Andrew said, we could still end up with just 1 or 0 MPs. We might not end up with any additional councillors. Caroline Lucas won her seat in 2010 because there was a firm, long-lasting base of Green Party councillors doing the work day in and day out. And yes, we all want to have more influence, we want to have more MPs, but we've got to invest in that councillor base, and then on top of that, look to get further MPs. And I'd much rather have 2 or 3 MPs and still be on 4% of the national vote, looking at what Caroline's been able to do as a single MP, than I would go up to 10% and still have nobody or just one person in Parliament.
Thank you, Jonathan. Andy?
So, quick question. Who knows who Pete West is? One person. 2. Pete West was the very first Green councillor elected to Brighton City Council in 1996. And I often say when I'm trying to encourage people to stand for council, if you want to see Green MPs elected, at some point there will have been a first Green councillor. And without Pete West, there would have been no Caroline Lucas as a Green MP. So John's quite right. It's incredibly important that we get Green councillors in there. But it's not an either-or question, because we've definitely got to raise our profile as a party, and we've got to get out the idea across as a national force. We have the car crash of Brexit on the way. And Brexit will be a car crash in lots of different ways. It'll be a car crash for the Conservative Party, certainly. The Lib Dems who didn't show up on crucial votes. And the Labour Party, who have betrayed a lot of the young people who have supported them through this process. And we have got to be ready for that as a party. We've got to represent ourselves, relaunch ourselves, if you like, as a way. And saying, look, here is a party that sticks by its principles. Here is a party that you can believe in. Here is a party that is doing things, going forward, coming up with ideas that will actually take us all forward. So it's not an either or. Yes, we've got to build our council base, but we've also got to build ourselves as a national party which provides hope for people that at the moment they don't have. And we can do that and we can achieve it, and it's something I'm incredibly excited about. And I want to make sure that as deputy leader, I'll be getting those ideas in place. Thank you.
I think this is an interesting question and actually ties in a little bit to the question before about what the job of deputy leader is, because really it's working to put in place and embed strategic work that creates the structures that increases our vote share and gets more Greens elected, but also how we present ourselves so that we inspire people to vote Green and get involved. The two go hand in hand, but we do need to be, the only way that we'll win more MPs is by winning more councillors. And for some places across the country, although you can deliver a target to win strategy, it's about how you create those foundations and how you build from current successes. And so I think that in terms of our vote share, we can't just, for many areas, target to win alone is not enough. It's about how we inspire and increase the capacity of our party. Rashid mentioned the Green Surge, and obviously, so when I was first elected, there were 18,000 members of the Green Party. There's still around, there's 40,000, 45,000. So we are retaining our members, we are retaining our votes. The 2017 general election was our second highest vote share in our history. But I think we need to be doing more in terms of how we convert votes. For me, one of the key steps that we need to be embedding in the party is what we do after we win a council or after a local council election or a general election. Of going to our G1s and saying, thank you for your support, will you join the party? Here's how you can get involved, and here's how you can build a movement. Because I think that we need to be thinking of that conversion of how we take Green voters, turn them into Green activists, and turn them into potential councillors for the future. And that journey and that story is going, I think it's really important to make sure that we do continue to increase our councillors and work towards ensuring that we get the next Green MP, and in my mind, a Green government.
Although not mutually exclusive, which do you see as being more important, putting resources into increasing our national vote share or increasing our council numbers through more targeted work?
I'm getting a strange sense of deja vu.
Sorry. Okay, one more submitted from Barry Cooper in Waltham Forest and Redbridge. Is Barry here? His question was, how would you influence Theresa May to hold a second referendum on Brexit?
It's a good question. So I am firmly in favour of a second referendum. I think to influence Theresa May, I'm proud that often the Green Party, once again on this, have been streets ahead of everyone else. Once again, we have been at the forefront of political discourse. A year ago, when I stood in the general election in Leamington and made this one of my 3 key points, I got laughed at, I got abused, I got said this will never happen, and yet here we are just a year a bit more later, and for the first time an opinion poll has shown that a majority of people want to see a second referendum. So I think the Green Party actually have done a great job on pushing this, and we need to keep getting out there and making that message. The only other thing I would add, which I think is really, really important, is that we're kidding ourselves if we think that people have lots of people have changed their mind about Brexit. A few have, sure. But the majority of people that voted Leave 2 years ago still say that they wanted to vote Leave and they want to leave the EU. And I want to make sure that, yes, we need to be democratic, and I want that second vote, but I don't want it, I want it done in a way that unifies the country. And as the Green Party, we need to get on the front foot now and address head-on those issues about why people voted Leave while still arguing to stay in the EU. Because if we go into this and continue to split the country, we do that at our peril.
Thank you. Andy?
Okay, well, first of all, it's not a second vote. It's not a second bite of the cherry. It's a fresh vote. It's a ratification referendum. It's about the issue itself. Right, okay, we've seen Brexit, we've seen what it looks like. It's awful, and we want to vote on that. We want to be able to say what we think about it. Because we've got a bit of an issue here in that the issue with Brexit is that the future of the Conservative Party is at stake, and that, for the Conservative government, is more important than the country. And that's the big problem that we've got to overcome. One thing that we are seeing with the whole prospect of a no-deal Brexit, a very real possibility, is that there's a whole issue with food, with air travel, a whole lot of issues that are coming down the line, which are showing us that the implications of a no-deal Brexit are even worse than Brexit with some sort of deal attached to it. So one issue I want to take with Rashid is I think we need to keep going out in the streets. I think wherever we happen to be is getting out there and getting involved in protests and make sure that people are aware that mass numbers of people are concerned about this. And we've got to, I think it will be different than Jionathan believes, because I think young people, since the Brexit vote, have become much more mobilised than they were before. They will care passionately about their future, and the electorate has changed. Because the years have gone on, and those people, those 16-year-olds who are looking at all those people who are going out to vote thinking, that's my future and I can't vote, will have the chance to have their say, and we need to give them that ability.
I'm so proud of this conversation about people's vote, because when I set up, I founded Greens for a Better Europe, we ran a very positive campaign. We were unapologetic about our positions on migration and really challenged the Main Remains campaign of talking about big business and corporations, and really put that message forward about human rights, workers' rights and environmental protection. When the result happened, we had a meeting where we talked about our next message, and Caroline stood in front of Parliament and said, we need another referendum on the terms of Brexit, because you'd never sign a contract without first reading the fine print. And actually there has been precedent for this in other referendums around the world. In Australia they had a first referendum on if they wanted proportional representation, and then a further referendum on what that deal would look like. And when we were in Parliament Square just a couple of weeks ago, and there were hundreds of thousands of people chanting for a people's vote, for a new vote on this referendum, I was really proud that as the Green Party were the first people to put that message out there and have inspired so many people to do the same. We need to be making sure we know that maybe more people know now about what the EU is. The most Googled term on the day of the result was, what is the European Union? And we have a point where even David Davis has changed his mind on many things, particularly on the fact that he thinks it's possible that this country will even deliver Brexit. On young people, we need to be inspiring young people and pushing for votes at 16. The idea that in Scotland people were able to vote at 16 on the referendum then, but then weren't able to vote again. We need to keep pushing that campaign, but also challenge the rise of the far right if we do. The fact that we're seeing a rise of toxic politics, we do need to still be there, talking about migration and ensuring that we're talking about our friends, our family, our colleagues, our neighbours, and ensuring that we do not allow whatever happens with Europe as an excuse for a rise of the far right in the UK.
Yes. In relation to this strong and stable snappy nation. Remember that, right? And I was saying that Brexit, it's not going to happen. And I was saying from the day of the referendum, it wasn't going to happen. People are like, crazy. You see the result, it's 52 to 48, it's going to happen. I said, it's not going to happen. Because the stakes are way too high. Like, way too high in terms of the business interests. And we've got to be really frank about this and understand that the politics of this country is driven by business, it's not driven by the people. So even though the people might not vote 52 to 48, the fact that the business people now realise that they're going to lose money and there's going to be investment going elsewhere, they're going to find a way somehow to fudge. And as it goes on, I'm seeing them get nearer and nearer towards the fudge. And the guys who were cussing me a year and a half ago, saying, boys, what do you reckon? What do you think is going to happen? I said, I told you it's not going to happen. They'll find a way to fudge this result. And the whole thing with Brexit in the first place, if you remember back in, I think it was 2014, George Orwell goes over to Europe to try and get the proposed bonus cap removed for the super wealthy bankers who created the mess in the first place. And because he had to head back, all of a sudden the Brexit argument starts to pick up a whole load of steam. So really we want to be looking at what's really behind all this stuff. What I would say, to conclude, is that Lambeth was the highest Remain vote on mainland UK, 80%. And back when we had the referendum, I did an interview with the BBC and I said the reason why we have the highest Remain vote is because we have the most active Greens in London. We're doing the work and we're giving a counter-narrative to the dross that UKIP is serving up. And people realise that they say, get out of here. And now, a year or 2 years later, we now see that in Lambeth, the Greens are the opposition. Why? Because we gave that alternative. We didn't say we're the third place or we're the second place, we said we're the alternative. And people recognise that, it resonated with them. And I would say that Brexit, don't worry, just fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a fudge.
That is all the time we have for questions, so if we can move to the